Mercedes-Benz E-class W211, S211, E-class sedan, rear and all-wheel drive. Mechanics and automatic. Gasoline, SUG, and diesel engines from 122 to 314 horsepower. If the Mercedes in the back of the W210 received the nickname Big-Eyed for switching to an unusual style of headlighting from Mercedes at that time with separate round headlights, then its heir, the W211 series, received a much more offensive nickname, Cross-Eyed, again, for the shape of the headlights. The car has become more beautiful, more comfortable, and, subjectively, more feminine. Part of the public is embarrassed by this, but let's remember that in Russia, Mercedes, by pure misunderstanding, is considered a male being. In fact, Mercedes is a beautiful female name, and many people remember it from the novels of Dumas. Well, quite objectively, the car has become even more difficult and even more expensive to maintain than its predecessors. Heir and glorious ancestors. As you know, Mercedes is either new or classic, and this generation of the E-Class has become classic right from the moment it was released. The new car is a worthy successor to the highly successful W210, which set new standards in terms of power, comfort, and equipment in the class at the time. The new car had only to defend the position. From a technical point of view, the pre-styling W211 is not much different from its ancestor. The same engines, the same gearboxes, the same choice of trim levels, but everything is a little better, a little more convenient and more beautiful. And the new generation turned out to be more commercially successful. More than 1.5 million cars in 7 years of production against 1.3 million for the W210, although the W124 is far from the great-grandfather. The circulation of those cars amounted to all 2.5 million, but the 124th was produced for 9 years against 7, and the gamut of bodies included both a coupe and a convertible, which over time were transferred to a separate platform. So the comparison is not entirely correct. Restyle or door style. The car was introduced in 2002, and the next generation of the E-Class appeared only in 2009, so the car lived on the assembly line for a very long life. During this time, the model has experienced one major restyling in 2007 and many minor changes, and the range of engines and some basic systems, in particular the brake system, have completely changed. It is difficult to say which version of the car is better. Many, not unreasonably, about the arguments below, argue that pre-style W211s with large engines of the M112 V6 and M113 V8 series are a better option than newer cars. Moreover, the changes in appearance during restyling are not so great. In any case, it looks great to this day, which cannot be said about the more recent W212. A little about the offer. The range of car bodies has not changed in comparison with the W210. In any case, the choice will have to be made between a sedan and a station wagon. The drive will be either rear-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. Formatic in Russia has received the stable nickname Firmatic. Gearboxes are either 5-speed or newer and capricious 7-speed on some cars after restyling. AMG versions stand apart. They use their own automatic transmissions, albeit made on the basis of standard Mercedes boxes. But no matter what is under the hood, no matter what drive the car has, it will always have a spacious interior, excellent quality of finishing materials, a star on the hood, and 3 configuration options. There are few station wagon cars, less than 4% of all offers, so we can consider them piece goods. The positioning of the car has an effect. For representative functions, the passenger and freight version is not really needed, and if someone needs these functions, he will rather choose an SUV, so the choice is minimal. Fuel economy is also not very important for potential owners. Moreover, our gasoline is inexpensive, and Mercedes has a wide range of gasoline engines. 72% of all cars are gasoline, diesels account for 28%. The most common engines are petrol 1.8, 19% of offers, and diesel 2.1, 15%. The popularity of younger motors is quite justified. The body looks the same, and what kind of motor is there is not so important. But of course, 96% of cars with automatic transmission are still Merc. Motors. The basis of the pre-styling range of engines was the engines of the M271, M112, M113 families. The M271 family is the most common engine for the Ishki. The 1.8-liter inline-4 with a compressor has enough power and torque to pull a car that is by no means light. The engine power in the pre-styling version is 163 horsepower, After restyling, the power was increased to 183 horsepower. Variants of cars with direct injection were not officially delivered to Russia, but such versions were present in Europe, which means that you can also find a variant with the capacity of 170 horses and CGI letters in the model designation. Such machines are already similar in complexity to the M271 Evo motors, but due to their older age and smaller distribution, they are even more troublesome to operate. The motor is considered quite reliable, but it could not do without weaknesses. Most often, there are problems with the timing chain, which is pulled out, at the same time damaging the stars of the phase shifter drive mechanism. Problems often arose with runs of less than 60,000 kilometers, and now it is difficult to meet a car with a native timing mechanism. But still, its resource does not belong to the record. It is worth listening to the sounds during a cold start. As always, the payback for carelessness will be the repair of the cylinder head, or even the replacement of the motor. Problems with the operation of the crankcase ventilation system are typical for aged machines. The valves of the system stick, the tubes become dirty and crack. The result is often coking of the valve stems and loss of compression. The problem was eliminated as a result of 2 recall campaigns, and it practically does not occur on restyled, since 2007, engines. If the engine is with direct injection, then high-pressure fuel pumps, gasoline leaks into the oil, and injector failure are added to the number of problems. The engine's supercharger with a mechanical drive has a good resource. Bearing failure occurs infrequently, but in the event of noise, it is worth immediately going for repairs. Defective bearings can ruin the rotors and the compressor housing, after which it does not make much sense to restore it. Much more interesting is the older family of 6 and 8-cylinder engines M112 and M113, which were also installed on the restyled W210 and have earned a reputation as very reliable engines. Of course, the M104 is worse, but, apparently, this is the trend. The motors are becoming less reliable. A feature of the engines are 3 valve blockheads and the presence of 2 spark plugs per cylinder. Moreover, the latter are not always easy to replace even on 6-cylinder engines, not to mention the V8. A durable chain, reliable timing, a reliable piston group and cast iron liners, as well as a simple injection system create the prerequisites for trouble-free operation. Trouble can be delivered by interruptions in the operation of the ignition system, which quickly kill already weak catalysts, and oil leaks from the heat exchanger gaskets and from the gaskets of the blockheads due to malfunctions in the crankcase ventilation system. The wiring in the engine compartment is often damaged on older motors, but the engines installed on the W211 are still too young for such defects. These are more likely the problems of later W210s with the same motors. The reason for this is the hot temper and layout features of Mercedes engines. The engine is practically enclosed in a capsule, isolated from the engine shield as much as possible, and there is little room for ventilation. There are several options for the same type of V-shaped motors. The M112 has variants with a displacement of 2.4 liters with a capacity of 170 horsepower, almost not used on the W211, 2.6 liters with 177 horsepower, E240, a volume of 2.8 liters and a power of 197 horsepower, E280, 3.2L with a capacity of 224 horses, E320. 8-cylinder engines with a volume of 5 liters and a power of 296 horsepower is the M113 series. Structurally, they are exactly the same as the 6-cylinder ones, just a couple of cylinders have been added. The weight has increased slightly and it is a little more difficult to get access to the last cylinders of the engine. Potentially, these engines are the most reliable of all gasoline engines installed on the E-class of this generation. Relatively easy to maintain, with a minimum number of children's problems and expensive spare parts, they regularly carry these machines, having a reserve of both power and resource. It is probably no less important that the cars with them have a good exhaust sound. Unlike the noise of the Force, these engines practically sing. So, if finances allow you to pay tax, this is the best option. Motors of the newer M272, M273 family replaced the M112, M113 family during restyling, although the first M272s have also been found on pre-styling cars since 2005. These are also structurally close families of V6 and V8 engines. The key difference from its predecessors is the absence of cast iron sleeves. The alusil coating is used here, theoretically more durable, but also more fragile. It is severely damaged by solid particles, grains of sand, soot, and even oil soot. These motors are very sensitive to the cleanliness of work and the condition of all systems, especially intake filters. The motors are a little more traditional and more powerful than the old ones. They have 4 valves per cylinder and only 1 candle. Unfortunately, the engines of this series proved to be a real disaster from the point of view of the owners. In the foreseeable past, brands have not used so many untested technical solutions on mass-produced cars. The real trouble for all owners of cars with M272 and M273 engines was the low resource of timing chains, and especially the wrong material of the balance shaft drive star on 6-cylinder engines or just a bypass star on 8-cylinder ones. The wear products of chains and stars, getting into the oil, could also damage the cylinder piston group, and the features of the motor assembly required high costs to fix the problem. V6 has to be removed from the car to replace the balance shaft with the star. The shaft is fixed behind the engine. The V8 does not have such a problem, but if its dampers fail due to chain wear, then the blockheads will have to be removed. As a result, the scope of work is not much different from the overhaul. There are still problems with oil leakage from the heat exchanger and from the engine itself due to damaged gaskets and poor operation of the crankcase ventilation system, as well as with catalysts, and on these engines, the remnants of the spilled catalyst most often damage the cylinder coating if you pull with a replacement. The intake manifold also fails, in which the axes of the plastic dampers become loose. The price of the assembled part is high, from 37,000 rubles for a non-original and over 50,000 rubles for an original Mercedes, and components for its repair are not produced, only a replacement assembly. The rest of the breakdowns are not so common. But on the other hand, this series of engines pleases with a lively character, and if you follow the timing and cleanliness of the oil in the crankcase, timely replacement of consumables, then in theory the resource can be very large. And these engines are a little more economical and environmentally friendly than the old ones. Gasoline consumption is on average 1.5 liters less than that of the comparable power of its predecessors. In terms of exhaust purity, the engines meet the requirements of the Euro 5 class, and some modifications even Euro 6, according to the data of the Mercedes official catalog. The full list of engine options is as follows: M272 2.5 liter with 204 horsepower on E230, M272 3.0 liters with 231 horsepower on models E280, M272 3.5 liters with a capacity of 268 and on E350, 272 horsepower or 305 horsepower in the CGI version with direct injection on later modifications. The larger V8 M273 on the W211 is found only in the 5.5-liter version and produces all 388 horsepower. Transmissions. The drive of a real Mercedes, as you know, is rear-wheel drive. As a last resort, full 21% of cars. Four-wheel drive here is permanent, without locks. The system is very reliable if you monitor the oil level in the axles and transfer case. Gearboxes are mainly automatic, Series 722.6, a 5-speed automatic transmission of the company's own design. Mechanical boxes are few and far between, as are problems with them. But the automatic transmission, despite the overall good design, can fail, but mainly because of the already large runs and a fair amount of engine power. The automatic transmission Series 722.6 appeared on Mercedes in the back of the W210. But by the time the W211 was released, its childhood illnesses were basically corrected. There is no unsuccessful bushing here, and the solenoids were installed more reliable. But on the other hand, automatic transmission software began to use an incomplete torque converter lockup more often, so boxes with a worn-out donut can already be found with runs of 150,000 on V6 engines. First of all, the blocking valve suffers. The box starts to twitch when you try to turn it on incompletely. In extreme cases, you cannot turn on the drive until the box has warmed up. The car immediately stalls. At first, twitches appear only on a cold one, but if you start it, then soon the car will be able to move only on a tow truck. Of course, the wear products of the lock lining harm the rest of the automatic transmission parts. In general, the cleanliness of the oil should be carefully monitored and do not forget to change it every 60,000. Despite the manufacturer's assurances that there is no such service operation and there is not even a dipstick to control its level. The cost of an oil change is not that small. 8 liters required for replacement will cost at least 6,000 rubles. The price of the filter is from 1,500, and the cost of work is from 3,000. and it is better to contact a specialized service that has the necessary equipment. The price of repairing a solenoid is already from $6,000, excluding the cost of oil, and repairs usually fit in $25,000. But compared to the price of an automatic transmission overhaul, from $80,000 and above, these are trifles. Similar problems are also found on running, restyled cars with the 7-speed automatic transmission 722.9. It is also 7G-tronic, but due to age, the number of resource problems is small. But a lot of breakdowns and problems due to the fact that the transmission on the W211 was installed in the first releases, and the problems that were eliminated in its later versions on older cars can spoil a lot of nerves for the owner, not to mention the cost of fixing problems. This box was installed on the E350, E500, E320 CDI, E420 CDI models since 2005 and since the 2007 model year on almost all models without all-wheel drive. Chassis. The normal spring suspension has no obvious weak points. The air suspension is not very common, but it causes a lot of trouble. The pneuma cylinders do not like dirt and cold, they slowly crack, the compressor life ends, the system seals leak due to repairs, the sensors fail. The cost of the components is very high. The original cylinder costs from 60,000 rubles, and there are 4 of them and you need to change them in pairs. Electrician. The SBC brake system has become a real disaster for owners of pre-styling cars. The company abandoned the use of a conventional vacuum booster and used an ABS unit with a built-in Bosch electric hydraulic pump. Unfortunately, the resource of the block is finite. The electric motor of the pump wears out, the pressure in the accumulator drops, the valves become dirty. The first problems arose early. The inscription, "Check the brake system," appeared on the dashboard of some cars as early as the 3rd year of operation. At first, the problem was solved by flashing. They simply changed the number of system activations. 1 million or 2 were not enough. Then they announced a recall campaign and replaced the SBC blocks. Replaced blocks also have a finite resource and a considerable price. A new block costs 180,000 rubles, and the price of a used one, but with a margin of resource, averages 60,000. But they repair it in few places. There are not enough specialists, and the area is serious. Everything but this is the braking system. The responsibility is high. Despite 2 batteries, there are also cases of brake failure due to power failure. And it is very difficult to slow down a 2-ton car without the help of a brake booster. Be on the lookout. Unfortunately, xenon optics fails. Its reflectors corny burnout. Summed up the company Hella, which is the court supplier of headlights. The price of a new headlight starts at 60,000 rubles, a magic figure, and optics repair is still a rarity with us. Against this background, not very reliable air conditioning compressors and the problems of a conventional suspension do not seem to be significant. Body. Body corrosion resistance is good, but not outstanding. Rust is found on old cars and on specimens that have been in accidents, and the metal blooms quickly. It is better to tint right away, otherwise it will come to holes. Yes, the old Mercs did not allow themselves such things, but the ecology, you know. Yes, and the cars are now all non-eternal. What is the result? The car is complex in principle. It has many devices that increase comfort and tend to break down. In general, it is very reliable, but the cost of maintenance is high. It is especially expensive to fix the problems of the new engines of the 272 and 273 series with the new automatic transmissions 722.9, but the residual value of the restyled cars is still high. It makes sense to try, especially since the runs can be relatively small and there is still a margin for age problems. But pre-styling cars delight with more reliable engines and automatic transmissions, but they have high mileage and have the ill-fated SBC system, which was removed after restyling. Which is better is up to you, but this is just such a case when an older car may have an advantage over a newer one in the cost of maintenance. Indeed, in terms of comfort and handling, restyled and pre-styling copies are approximately equal, and such cars are well serviced. What's in the dry matter? This is a car that meets modern requirements for active and passive safety, comfort, and has not even lost its prestige. She looks great and drives great. The number of configuration options is overwhelming, but the cost of maintaining such a machine does not correspond to the price at which it was bought. Be prepared for the fact that this is a real Mercedes, but not a new one. It is cheaper to maintain a pre-styling car with a V6 engine and a 5-speed automatic transmission or any with an inline 4. On restyled 4-cylinder rear-wheel drive cars, there will be no eternal trouble in the form of SBC, but the automatic will be less reliable, although more agile. All-wheel drive restyled cars will have a more reliable 5-speed automatic transmission, so if you buy a car younger than 2007, it is better to choose the 4MATIC version. At the same time, you can feel much more relaxed in winter. Diesels are traditionally good, especially 2.1, but it will be more of a taxi car than a prestigious business class, and there is a chance that in her past life she drove checkered through Europe or even Russia. Buy only good cars. There are no small things, every little thing is precious.